So hi there. Raise your hand if you have a driver's license. Up top. Yep, nice and high. Okay, now leave your hand up. Leave your hand up if you feel like you're an above average driver. Okay, good. Now leave your hand up. Now look around the room. You can see better than I can from where you are, trust me. Take a look around. Kind of blows the concept of average, doesn't it? Yeah, well, you're not alone. As a matter of fact, 80% of drivers in America believe that they are above average. A recent Allstate study actually showed that 64% of Americans think that they are excellent drivers. However, our actions don't match our mentality. The facts of the matter is, and the statistics show, that 90% of us suck at driving. We do. We suck at it. So how do we get this discrepancy between how we think we are and how we actually are? Well, it starts a long time ago. If you go back to 1986, in the mid-'80s, we were in the top 3 countries in the world for safe driving. Fast forward to 2013, and the same study ranked us 42 out of 46 measured countries. Pretty bad. Now, while this might be a worst-case scenario study, pretty much every study shows us going on a downward slope. Most of them keeping us well out of the top 10. So how does this happen? What changed in 30 years? What have we done differently that we used to be so great and now we're down towards the bottom? Well, it's actually a complex question. And that comes with a very complex answer. To start off with, our roads today are not what they used to be. You know, the population on the road is much more dense than it was 30 years ago. So traffic has gotten much more thick. With that, most people feel like they're in a rush. So you have a bunch of frustrated drivers out there. Many of those drivers are distracted. And pretty much all of them are looking out for themselves and themselves only. So said another way, this is a recipe for chaos. It's a battle zone out there, basically. I come from a long history in the motorsports industry, doing a lot of race driving, a lot of training of all types of driving, and I will tell you this. I feel 100 times safer on any racetrack, on any day with anyone than I do on any public street. And that's a pretty sad state of affairs. So that's the first part. The second part of what's changed is our education system. Driver's education in this country is something of an oxymoron. Now, that's not to slam on all the driver educators out there, because most of them are doing the very best they can with what they have, and it ain't much. They don't have the resources that they need. There's always going to be bad apples in every industry, and yes, there are some. I'm the CEO of an organization, a nonprofit called Teen Driving Solutions. We take a family approach to teaching teens and their families how to be smart, safe, and responsible drivers. You will not believe the stories that I hear about some of those bad apples. A driving educator who sits on his seatbelt, not in it, and tells his student, I don't believe in seatbelts. Driver's educators who train their students how to set their mirrors and their seat improperly, usually because they don't know any better. But for the most part, they're doing the very best they can with what little they have, and they don't have enough. Driver's education has been ripped out of the public schools, handed off to private industry, where there are for-profit companies that are running it that are much more interested in a revenue stream than they are the quality of service they provide. The requirements to get your license have been lowered so low that it is way too easy to get a license in this country. Our government doesn't take driving as seriously as they should. So the education system has been neutered, it's been watered down, and it's been demoralized to the point that it is failing our teens. It's not fair what we are doing to our teens. We are throwing our teens out in that chaos of frustrated, distracted drivers who are looking out for themselves and themselves only, with very little education, very little training, and very little experience. And that is simply unfair. They deserve better. The results of what we've created there is the statistic that driving is the #1 cause of death for teens in this country. And it has been for quite some time. So there are a lot of families, roughly 6,000 per year, that have a policeman show up at their door at some time of the night. They get that call, that dreaded call that no one wants to get. And this is the statistic that we've created. Well, there's enough organizations like Teen Driving Solutions, myself, individually, lots of other people that we've pushed our government to do better. Let's raise the bar. Let's raise the standard. Let's make it more challenging to get your license. And the government said, okay, they got tired of us belly aching. We'll do something about it. And of course, what they did was what they do best, a study. Well, the study's results were published in April of 2012 by NHTSA. And realizing you can't really read that, I'll paraphrase the first 2 sentences of the conclusion for you without going into the gory detail. It's pretty scary. Sentence number 1 basically says, we feel that the driver's education curriculum is doing a sufficient job of teaching students how to pass the licensing exam. They are teaching them to pass the test. We are not teaching people how to drive anymore. We're teaching them how to pass the test. That's not the scary sentence. The really scary sentence is the next one. It basically says, it is unreasonable to expect this curriculum to reduce the number of teen crashes or fatalities, as that is beyond the scope of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, our government doesn't give a crap about your teen safety. They just want to generate more tax-paying, revenue-generating citizens, put them on our roads where they can get mobile and go shop so that they can fund Club Fed. That is what they care about. They place the responsibility of teaching teens how to drive safely and responsibly squarely on the parents' shoulders, and the parents, we've already established, came from a driver's education system that wasn't working, and they're out there with bad habits, being frustrated, distracted, and looking out for themselves only. Not necessarily modeling the best behavior, much less not being a trained driver educator. A lot of states have implemented something called the Graduated Driver's License System, the GDL. And the GDL basically says that we're going to put restrictions on you until you get to a certain age, and various restrictions for every year. Well, that has reduced the number of teen deaths from the ages of 16 to 17 by almost 27%. The problem is it's kicked the can slightly down the road. The death rate from 17 to 18 has actually gone up, and from 18 to 21 has gone up by almost 40%. And the reason for this is there are plenty of teens out there that in so many ways, this just being one of them, say, you know what, I'm perfectly happy allowing mom and dad to be my chauffeur and drive me around until such time that I turn 18, and then I don't have to go through driver's ed at all. I don't have to go through the graduated driver's license system at all. All I need to do is go down and pass a really easy test and go on a check ride and have my unrestricted license handed to me. And that's what we've created. Incidentally, here in North Carolina, the driver's license test is 25 questions long. 25. You go out on about a 5 to 8 minute check ride, because that's all they have time to give you, because the queue waiting to go on those check rides is so long that they have to rush you through. So it's very easy to get a license. So our education system is broken. Another part that has led us down this primrose path is we in this country tend to see driving as downtime. What can I get done between point A and point B? Because, hey, I'm just driving, right? Well, that's how a lot of people see it. We see it as non-productive time. What else can I do? This is why you see people texting, using their phone, reading a book, reading the paper sprawled out across the dash and the steering wheel, writing a book, changing clothes while they're driving. All kinds of stuff is going on in our cars while we're driving, except paying attention to driving. I once saw a woman, I actually encountered her twice on 2 different interstates in the same trip, about an hour apart, and The first time I encountered her, I'm on the interstate, speed limit's 70, I'm doing about 72 if I'm honest. She comes blowing by me in the left lane, and she is doing about 15 to 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. She doesn't slow down until traffic impedes her progress. Then she starts weaving in and out. That's the only time she got out of the left lane, incidentally. And then all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, she just started slowing down and started driving extremely erratically, violating her lane on both sides. She got down to about 10 to 15 miles per hour below the speed limit. And normally, what I'll teach my teens all the way up to executive protection, high threat operations, if you have a threat, keep it in front of you because you can control that situation, right? If it's behind you, you can't steer and press the pedals for these people. However, when they go 10 to 15 miles per hour below the speed limit for a long period of time, at some point, it's just practical to pass them. So as I'm passing her, I look over, and she's got her pinkies wrapped around the bottom of the steering wheel, and she must be writing a novel on her iPhone because her thumbs are just going at it. And that's where her attention is on that iPhone, and that's why she's so erratic. Well, about an hour later, 45, 50 miles later on a completely different interstate, here she comes again, the exact same scenario. Only this time, she became really erratic, ran off the road one time, violated her lane so badly she almost hit another car, etc., etc. Same exact thing, 15 miles per hour, below the speed limit. When I got up next to her this time, I kid you not, her left hand was on the steering wheel like this, with the back of her hand. That's what she was steering with, while her right hand was doing her nails. Downtime. She saw this as downtime. Now, what made this particular situation very interesting to me was her car had a complete wrap job for a major insurance company whose name I won't mention. However, I will say I found her driving very progressive. So we have this thing that we think driving is downtime, and it's actually easy and doesn't require much of our attention, but it actually does. We need to pay 100% of our attention 100% of the time to stay engaged with what we are there to do because it's chaos. A friend of mine has this really cool sticker plaque inside of his race car. I love it. It basically says, "Warning, this machine has no brain. Use of yours is required in its operation." So, ladies and gentlemen, the self-driving car is not here yet. We can't put away our responsibility to the car itself. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people who think the self-driving car is going to be this wonderful panacea. We're always going to arrive on time, and we'll never have another crash, and we don't even need red lights. Yeah, no. Sorry. It's only going to get worse before it gets better. Imagine this, if you will. There's all these people out there who are frustrated, distracted, and looking out for themselves only, attempting to figure out what this computer-driven car is about to do next. While at the same time, that computer-driven car is attempting to figure out, and it's only got a limited number of scenarios, mind you, that they can program into it, it's attempting to figure out what all these other people around it with two first names, Mo and Ron, what they're going to do next. Right? So there's going to be mass confusion. It's actually going to get worse before it gets better. The only time it's going to get better is when we see beyond critical mass, there are much more self-driving cars than not on our roads. At that point, maybe we'll see a difference. That's a long ways off. That is a long ways off, folks. So, other countries seem to get this right. We've fallen way, way down. There's a video behind me playing of an intersection in a country in South America. You may notice that there are no lane lines. There are no stop lines. There are no crosswalks for pedestrians, no stop lights, no stop signs, no nothing. There's cars coming from every direction, going in every direction. It's basically a free-for-all. There's pedestrians walking across with their small children and their pets, and everybody seems to be going across, and no one's hitting anything or anyone, and everybody's getting it done. You think anyone's eating a burger there? Think anybody's got their phone out texting while they're doing this? No. What are they doing differently from us? Well, number one, they've taken a preventative approach. They've taught people how to drive cooperatively, how not to be distracted, and avoid the crash instead of recover from it. As opposed to here, we take an intervention approach. Let us show you what to do when the crash starts to happen, right? Let us show you how you to bend over and, while you're in your car, because that's basically what we're leaving you with your education. So they seem to get it right. Can you imagine that intersection in the U.S.? It would be the zombie apocalypse with a steaming pile of cars and bodies hanging out. It would be craziness, right? So, what can we do? Well, number one, we can take a different attitude about driving. We can start to look at driving as a serious pastime. You know, in my day when I got my license, the only thing we had to distract us in the car was a radio with 2 big knobs, one on either side, and 5 manual push buttons. And maybe if you were lucky, you had a tachometer in your car. But that was it. Unless there was somebody else in your car to have a conversation with, you had to pay attention to driving because that was all there was to pay attention to. Today, the cars themselves are becoming their own worst enemy. You got pretty touch screens, you got all these fancy gizmos in the car that beg your attention to come back inside the car instead of where it should be, out on the road. You know, you combine this with all the other gizmos that we have on our waist and everything else, iPads, iPhones, telephones, you name it, and we have all these things that beg for our attention. So we can change our attitude about driving. We can raise the bar on education. We can make it much more challenging to get your license. You might be asking yourself, what can I do specifically? Well, number one, I'll tell you what I tell my teens. Take your phone, put it on silent, not vibrate, silent, and put it where you cannot see it, in a console or a glove box. Because the little light that flashes on there, a study was recently done, the notification light, the urge to check what caused that notification light is actually stronger than that of a smoker for a cigarette. That's pretty crazy. So you want to put this where it doesn't tempt you to pick it up. You can get your seating position and your mirror positioning proper because most people do not know how to do that. You can go look me up, Chuck Hawks on YouTube. I've got one video. There's tons of videos out there that show you how to set this up. You can change your mindset and focus on what's out in front of you. Play what if with yourself. What if my tire blows? What if that car runs that stop sign? What if the truck next to me decides my lane is theirs and no warning? What do I do? Keeps your mind engaged on what you're there to do. I want to introduce you to Michaela. She came to our program a little over a year ago. She had been in 4 crashes in 4 weeks just after getting her license. None of them fender benders, all of them serious. One of them that she should have been killed 5 ways to Sunday. So when she showed up to us, she basically, there was no value we had to give her. She was invincible. Well, Dan Wagner, our founder, pulled her out of her car, sat her down on the grass and said, "Your life matters. You have value and I care deeply about you. And we're worried you're going to become a statistic. You're incredibly smart and you have good driving skills. Your attitude's what's going to get you killed." Well, he touched her heart, and believe it or not, she changed. She's actually come back as a poster child for safe driving. She's now an advocate for our program. She's been back to almost all of our programs this year. She even paid for one of her friends to come through after her friend got in a crash. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the type of transformation that is available to us if we will simply change the way we think about driving. And I think that's an idea worth spreading, and I hope you do too. Thank you.